Welcome back. Chris Garlock here with Michael Redmond, 9 Don Professional. Let me turn my sound down here. There we go. So this is our second stream this week, Michael. Pretty cool, right? Getting a little feedback there. I'll have to turn that up. So, cool. All right. So a couple of housekeeping things. Just remember all kinds of details about Go at usgo.org. You can find out more about anything you want to know about Go there. And then we will be back. Michael will be back next week. He's going to be going to the first ever Asian Go Congress in Singapore, starting roughly Monday. So best way to find out when we do the stream would be to follow our channel here, and then whenever we go on the air, you will get notified. Also, if you don't already subscribe to the e-journal, then you should do that. You can sign up at usgo.org and find out all kinds of wonderful, cool stuff that we report on all the time. So I think that's all the housekeeping. Michael, I think we decided we'll start up the new year when we start up our streams in early January. We'll go back to our AlphaGo games. Although folks can actually tune in on our YouTube channel on Fridays. We've got I think 2 or 3 more AlphaGo games in the can, don't we, Michael? Something like that? I've lost track.
Like about 2 that we haven't posted yet, I think.
There we go. So check those out. We'll have those coming out over the next few weeks. So, and then we'll start recording more in January. And so keep an eye on our YouTube channel for that. So we wanted to close out the year with what Michael says is his best game of the year. So I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, another way to put that would say it was the one half-decent game I played. So I won't be talking about my mistakes so much in this game. Most of the time I seem to have the right idea.
Yeah.
So I can be talking about that. And so I'm going to have fun. It's kind of my year-ending present to myself.
I think that's a great present.
It's going to be a fighting game. Takao, he's had some you might say bad luck in the Meijin tournament. This is the Meijin tournament that I'm playing him in. And we're playing in the final of the A elimination tournament. So there's a number of elimination tournaments. The final one is usually A. That's the highest one. There's an A and a B and a C. And we're at the final of the A. In the case of the Meijin, it ends with I think it's a 9-player round robin league. And so in order to get to the league, there's actually a final tournament after A. So there's still a few more rounds that I have to play, or I had to play. We'll be getting to those games later, probably next year. But this was the final of A. So Takao was the Meijin. He had the title about 3 years ago. And after he lost it, then he dropped out of the league the next year. And the year after that, he was in the final section, and he lost in that also. So here he is in A. So he's in the preliminary tournament, when just a few years ago he was the title holder.
Wow.
But he's still at the top of the Go world in some ways. Like he's in the S League of the Kisei tournament. And the Kisei tournament is sort of complicated. They have a number of leagues, but the S League is the highest one. It's the highest in their hierarchy. So he's still at the top of the tournaments in many ways.
And what can you tell us about him? Anything that of note that we should know?
Well, for a long time, even when he was very young, he was considered a kind of a prodigy and very promising. He plays a fairly thick, influence-oriented style, or at least he started that way, until he was confronted with Cho U, I guess about 10, 15 years ago. I don't even remember how long. It was a while ago. And they were sort of opposite styles, with Cho having a much stronger liking of territory compared to Takao. And in his matches with Cho U, he changed his game basically. So I think he was going to stagnate there, but he was sort of inspired by Cho U to become a much more strong fighting player. So that's more. He does more fighting nowadays.
And well, I want to get to the game, but a little bit later on, I'm going to ask you because I mean, a lot of folks have been asking both on the stream and then on our YouTube videos because we had a bit of probably our longest break in a while, about 4 or 5 months since we were doing the videos, and we were not on vacation. you were working hard on the Go board, playing quite a bit. So we'll come back and talk more about that. But let's go ahead and get into the game and we'll chat about that.
Okay, in this game again, in the last few games I've shown you, I've had white. I have white in this game too. It's just the chance of the draw. There was a time a few years ago when people were asking me if I just had black in every game. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have games in a row and where you have the same color. This was sort of helping me at the time because I was having trouble forming a plan for black. Just because of the differences between what I wanted to do and what Leela was telling me were advisable. And I still have issues with that, but so I was happy to play with white, in which I already sort of liked the two star points as an opening for white. Mm-hmm. And now there's this point in the game where you will see computer programs telling you to play here. The star point in the lower right corner. Mm-hmm. And if black plays like this, white plays like this, something like this can happen. We're going to see this happen again in the game, so I won't go into too much detail. And there's the question whether this is a Kikasi or is white just giving black territory and getting a heavy group. So I actually, this is an opening that I looked into a little bit. And I decided I want to start with the Kakari. In which case, of course, black can play something like this, for instance. There's no problem. Or he can play some kind of a pincer. Actually, pincers have become a bit rare, maybe, but this is the one that maybe a machine would play, a robot. And it's a pincer that Takao likes. So I play here now. So this is, in my study of this opening, I got the feeling that this actually works better once black is committed with that pincer on the right side. Mm-hmm. And black has a number of choices here. Like this is the game move, the most natural move. Black could also extend here. This is when black has a position on the right side like this. When black has the pincer there, making some strength on the right side. This is a choice that black can make. And so, for instance, locally, this is a variation that I see cropping up a lot with Leela. Mm-hmm. And so it's sort of standard for Leela. And the 3-3 point here is a key point. And white just ignores it. So white's going to be playing for sort of influence, you might say, on the outside. So this looks like it's, I could play white with this, I think. It's a nice, influence towards the left side of the board. And by playing on top like this, white has, the right side, is not going to expand very much. So basically, you could say I've deteriorated the value of this pincer on the right side because it's not so important now when black has that solid position in the lower right. Mm-hmm. So this would work. I hadn't actually studied that one too much, but other moves there would also be this Hane on the outside, which in general is considered to be not so good for black. But I could go on for a while with this. I think I should refrain from actually going into all the variations here.
We can take a poll.
Yeah. Well, this gets really exciting. White's going to play a Hane towards the 3-3 point, and then a number of things could happen. So I could talk about this all day, and you'd never get to bed. So we'll just leave it there. Probably have other opportunities. It's become a bit rare for black to play this Hane. I think in most cases it's considered to be not so good anymore. But you never know. It's a very fine difference. Like for humans, it wouldn't really matter, but when we use computer programs to score these variations, this one seems to be fading out a little bit. Because the computer programs change too. They improve, or at least they're updating day to day, the network files. So we got to this point, and this is just what I was talking about just now. It's interesting because the game move, which I played with confidence that it was the computer move, has sort of ceased to be the computer move. The Leela and I think other programs also have ceased to say that white should cut here. Now this is actually the most straightforward variation, in which case white has cut, sort of asking which side is black going to play to capture the white stone. Black can play this way, very simply. Actually, black can play the clasp at 17, or black can play from this side. But if black is going to play from this side, black doesn't want to give this forcing move to white. So that's why black curls around once to get an ideal shape in the corner. And in return, white has got that extra stone on the side. So this is a position where white has basically played this whole sequence to get that marked stone on the side, which works very well for white when white does this. So up to this point, my opening was sort of planned. I wanted to do this. And we'll get back to that because my plan slightly disagrees with what Leela wants me to do. But the interesting, for me, the interesting thing is that while Leela gave me this idea to start with, and it's a pretty standard move for a number of computer programs to cut here on the 3-3 point,
Right.
It has ceased to be so because now they're having white curl around here immediately. Now this is something that white was usually doing if black played this way, then white would play here. And there's a connection there when black plays the hane here and white starts trying to squeeze black. It's good for white to have this exchange in, this marked exchange, because even if black continues like this, black has to worry about the squeeze here. So white's creating a squeeze with these two stones in the corner. Obviously, white would not have that opportunity. In fact, black has to put a stone in now. So if black had taken from the other side, like this, then of course white would not have that opportunity, and black would be able to play more strongly on the outside. Actually, that would not happen in this variation, but it would happen in if I did it now, for instance. If I did it now, black would be able to play more strongly. And you would see that white would not have so much of a squeeze on the sky. It would be finished now. So I would, when I get into this variation, it's much better for me to have this black stone clasping from the other side at that point. In which case I would get to cover once, as in this variation. This gives me another forcing move on the lower side. And then, for instance, if black answers like this, I would just jump out. And I would have fighting prospects on both sides, the lower side and the right side. So this is okay. So the whole idea behind my cut here is to ask which side black captures on. Is black going to play just here, in which case I get to curl around? And in this variation, when black plays like this, so black's probably going to play something like this, and we get into some kind of variation like this, where I'm going to play an extension on the right side eventually. So maybe something like this. It's probably just okay for white. It's not, white has a living shape there, and has given black some territory in the lower right corner, but I'm sort of governing how the game is going to flow now on the right side. Black has to do something about that stone.
And I think you've answered. One of our viewers had a question about, I think what they're asking was about just a descent by white at S5, but I think that just eliminates all the aji completely, right, for white?
Well, if it's not sente, it's not going to be good. So it has to be sente. So right. It would be really good if black had played this one, then I get it with forcing move, as a forcing move. Right. Now I have a base on the right side, so this would be great. Usually white, this is just too good for white, almost always. So basically, that is something that white is thinking of. It's something that's not realistically going to happen. But if black does that, if black takes from the wrong side, then white does get that forcing move. Now it's going to come as a forcing move.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, white's not going to play theirs on the second line. So in this point, so it's really interesting that the computers have changed to this. So my interpretation of that is that in this position, white is saying, giving black the choice of going this way, in which case I was happy to get that marked stone as a forcing move. It's going to change what happens on the right side as we get into this variation. So I was saying that this marked stone here is working as an effective stone there. It's an effective move. It's worth the move. So I've gained a tempo, you might say, at the price of giving black some territory in the corner. But the computer programs curling around here first are now saying that white really wants to get into this variation anyway, and is going to cut at some later point. So it gets really complicated, but for instance, when black extends here, now white's going to cut, and it's a completely different story. In fact, it probably reverts to something like this. So something like this variation is going to happen now. So this is just sort of according to plan for white. Only white is sort of forcing the variation where white has curled around on the fifth line. So in a way, it makes sense. Although in my case, I was perfectly comfortable with this variation.
And as you said, you pretty much had a plan for this anyway.
Right. So the idea that now white is not going to play this variation, because actually it's a very fine point, but when the complicated variation starts, when black plays strongly, it's actually good for white to have that exchange, for black to have that exchange in. So if black is going to do something like this and now play a hane, sometimes it's good for black to have that exchange. So black will play strongly now. And black has this, again, black is taking from the right side now, so white doesn't have that extra forcing move. So this is actually playable for black, and black has a key point to aim at. A vital point in white's shape would be this attachment here, the center of 3 stones. It's the center of these 3 stones. So later on, black will be aiming at playing that attachment. So all that said, I probably explained too much and confused some people, but this was according to plan. But recently, I don't really think that originally Leela was telling me that. But nowadays, Leela says that actually instead of pressing from above like this, white should just play at A. And also Leela is often suggesting at some point to play the shoulder hit, which is a move I could play. It's okay. But at first I wasn't really understanding what the meaning of playing it in this particular case was. I think the idea is that white is going to, let's just make a variation for that, is going to play this kind of stuff and make a running fight out of it with a group on the right that is not completely, it needs one more move to get a complete base, but it's pretty comfortable, white's group on the right. So black is running out into the center, and white's idea will be to sort of switch to the upper side and get some kind of a position on the upper side while fighting in the center of the board.
I guess this.
Yeah, this looks like it would work, and this is what Leela was suggesting to me when I looked at it the other day. And in connection to that, you'll be seeing this in a lot of professional games too. This kind of move is often suggested for black, and this is a sort of weird move, but the idea again is that maybe a running fight is going to ensue, in which case black wants to have his stone on the 4th line. So, for instance, something like this. Actually, this is the variation that Leela was showing me. And since the player black is playing away like this, it's sort of hard to understand. I would be perfectly happy with white in this variation, actually. But Leela, with the idea that maybe white is going to do something like this anyway, then it would probably be better for black to be having that stone on the 4th line so that black can it becomes more difficult for white to curl around it to get on the upper side.
I think 2 needs a little explaining for folks because certainly the Q11 makes sense. I think P12, the capping move, makes sense to folks, but the R10, the extension, which
well, as I was saying, this is just so natural for me to press from above. So I agree with people who find the extension hard to understand.
Yeah.
And so I was puzzling it out because Leela was suggesting to play this move.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've been saying is I'm trying to attempt what my reasoning would be to fit these variations that Leela is showing me.
Right.
I'm not saying that Leela reasoned it out. That's not the way computers work. But I would say the idea is that it's better for white to chase black out. In this case, black will be able to live on the side. So in this case, I'm trying to connect my stones to make a strong position. Hopefully white can make some thickness towards the center that will work well with whatever happens on the left side of the board.
It's a little scary, certainly for amateurs to do something, like that to let black live because you've given black a big corner. You're going to let black live in this area in hopes of getting this thickness.
Yeah. Well, it just looked very good for me in concert with that mark stone in the lower right.
Yeah.
Lower right. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So it looked good, but Leela was suggesting that I should extend it at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think the idea is that to chase black out, it's a much more complicated game.
Yeah.
So if you're not confident in that kind of game, you can think about it. It's a very minor difference in the score even. So it doesn't really matter. If you're playing on your own and you don't have help with a computer, you're going to make bigger mistakes later on. So it's not a big problem. So it's better to take the game that you like.
Yeah.
But I found it very interesting that Leela was suggesting this move. So I tried to give a human story to that. And so in the game, I played on top.
Oh, okay. Because I love the shoulder hit, the N16. I love that move. That is really cool.
Yes. And so now if black is going to try to make a life, it could be something like this. You can see that black is going to damage the upper right corner to a certain extent. So moves like this would be very bad for the corner position. And this would just be, even if I just jumped into the corner, it would be very good for me.
Yeah.
So this is not going to happen in a pro game, but this is basically the idea that white has. So black played away. So what do you think this move is?
It's I'm trying to think of the family-friendly way. It's a strong move. It feels like there's like all the action is in the upper right, and so I assume it must be related to that.
Yeah, well, exactly. It looks like a very stupid move, actually. Because,
I was trying to think of a much nicer way to say that because former Meijins don't make stupid moves.
Well, they don't. And actually, it turns out that this move shows up a lot in the computer analysis.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually not a stupid move. But from my viewpoint, my instinct tells me that this has got to be the smallest side of the board. If we're looking at the sides, if the upper side, the left side, the lower side is smaller, because black has such a strong position in the lower right, and it's not exactly a high position. So low and a strong position, it means that there's no potential for either side. The amount of potential on the lower side is limited for both sides. But this comes up a lot in the computer analysis in various positions. So one facet of that, one idea is that black will just play a Kakari, this approach move, and doesn't have to play the side extension because black has such a strong position on the lower side. So it's going to be black's going to play with Sente, going to keep the tempo there. So it's in that way, it's playing the lower side is not as bad as we used to think it was. because black doesn't have to defend that stone. Black will welcome any kind of fight that happens on the lower side. But the more important point in this game is that it's a ladder breaking move.
Yes.
So if white answers it, black is going to push through and cut here. And there's this variation of that fight in which case the ladder has to favor white. So there's this thing that could happen. And this ladder now favors black. So that's the main reason. It's not as if there was no connection to the upper side. It was black has to have this ladder, even though this move that looks so strange is actually showing up in various variations of the computer analysis. In this game, it's more to do with this ladder here.
I'm sure folks at home had that all read out.
It's a very common variation, actually, that white can use to kill black when black pushes through and cuts. Mm-hmm. But of course, it needs to have a favorable ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So I jumped ahead of the game a little bit. So in the game, I added a stone with the sliding move. And it was a very difficult, this is a very difficult position for me. It was a very difficult position. Obviously, I saw that black was threatening to play a ladder. Mm-hmm. So I had a choice of playing a solid move or a loose move. And so I could play here, a very solid move. Or for instance, I could play here. This would secure territory on the right side. It would also give this forcing move to black. And you would probably play a double kakari here or something. Anything on the left side of the board. Nothing wrong with this. I think this was giving about even or slightly better for white. It's supposed to be slightly better for white because Leela works with 7.5 points komi. So it was probably about even. Mm-hmm. But I was sort of dissatisfied with that simple approach, and so I slid it into the corner. So this is my idea here is very simple. I just want to play the slide, and then I'm going to play one move on the side. And then later in the game, we'll be fighting in the lower left area, but later on it's going to turn out to be something like this. And it was slightly more efficient for me when compared. Let's see if I can get to that. When compared to this variation, where black has played that forcing move on the side, slightly more efficient, I would say. So I was going into this variation. Which is going to be a fairly slow-paced game, a fairly simple game. But I've caved in the corner just a little bit, so I'm happy with that. I think it's okay for white. So it turned out that Leela wants me to play a shoulder hit. Still,
we talked about that or on Monday. How Leela will, there'll be a point that Leela is just like, here. Play here.
Yeah. It's
still big.
Very insistent.
Still big.
Yeah. And again, the idea is that now the ladder is good for black. At some point, black can push out, but white's, it's including the potential of just letting black out and starting a running fight.
Cool.
And again, white's going to try to sort of curve around to get onto the upper side, maybe start building territory on the upper side. So, even if black breaks through, white has one extra stone in the locality, and it's okay for white. So I guess I understand that now. At the time, it crossed my mind. The shoulder hit crossed my mind. I knew this was a move that computer programs would suggest. AlphaGo, the master version of AlphaGo, really liked the shoulder hit. And Leela is suggesting it a lot. And I thought about it, and I couldn't find a reason that it was better than the game move. So I gave up on the move that I didn't understand. I think that's pretty valid strategy to give up on the moves you don't understand, even though I thought it would be a computer suggested move. So now black comes out.
Well, I think though, and this is certainly good for us amateur players. I mean, I think there's actually an argument to be made for amateur players to go ahead and play the moves that you don't understand, with the idea being, that's a way to learn. You have to be willing to accept a certain amount of pain and loss.
Yeah.
And this is a tournament game, so it's probably not a good time for you to be experimenting, right?
Yeah. Experiment. Yeah. And I had to check with Leela just to see if she actually did suggest that, but it turned out she did. So black pushes through again. Even now, although I have that extra stone there, I don't want to go into that ladder variation. There's really no, after black has played the cut here, there's no clean way for me to get out of this. Like if I play something like this, it's just going to be this kind of thing. That sliding stone is not really a very effective move. Like we could get into this. White has not gained enough by having this stone here. This exchange is actually bad for white. And again, the ladder favors black. This is just terrible on all sides. When I play here, the ladder favors black again. So I wouldn't be able to do that either. So this would be a complete failure. So I extend. And my reasoning here is that with that stone in the corner, with this stone, I have potential to make eyes in the corner by playing it through 3-point. I should be able to fight this. So my reasoning is very similar to what seems to be the idea with Leela's move, the shoulder hit here, is that I have an extra stone added to that group, which is going to make it relatively strong. So the reasoning that I attached to my move and the reasoning that I eventually attached to Leela's move is the same. So black plays here. So this was another point where I got into trouble with Leela because I thought of various moves and I just took the very simple one here. Playing simply is sometimes it's a good idea. Like it keeps you from confusing yourself.
I bet Leela didn't like that.
Leela didn't like that. In general, I find that computer programs using the neural networks that Google came up with, they tend to be to favor good shapes, good tesuji, good suji. And so this is the good shape here. I wasn't sure that it was better. So in this case, black is going to, the corner playing at Q17 would be so big that black has to protect the corner like this. So white is actually losing some territory in the corner. That's why I didn't play it. But white does get to clasp the one stone. So white needs one more move to live, but it's going to be pretty difficult for black to kill this in the future. I'm talking about the white group in the upper right. White is attacking at this point, but eventually I have to think about what the eye ship is going to be like. So this is actually a favorable fight for white. So I should have played this way. I was just, the loss of territory in the upper right sort of bothered me. And I figured that my idea was that if I can surround black and force black just to live on the side, this was going to be a good variation for me in any case. And that's why I chose to play simply. But Takao wasn't going to let it be that simple because he pushes through and cuts me off here. A lot of cutting points that black has used there. And now black can go back to the side to make a living shape. So all of this is working together to give black a living shape on the side for the time being. Later on, I'm going to be talking about what the conditions are for black to be completely alive. There are some conditions attached to that. So I play here. This was just getting rid of a cutting point here. There's a cut here. The ladder, that ladder actually favors white. But it's something that I was a bit worried about. And of course, the whole group could be attacked. So I'm protecting that group. Again, I cannot capture a ladder. So playing here, the ladder is going to favor black. And it's going to be bad. So I play here. At this point, Takao played here. This is a bad shape move.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, in the past, I've had trouble because I tend to get careless when my opponent plays a move like this and I feel sure that it's bad. And so I was extra careful this time. But it turns out that Leela is suggesting this move, which is much better shape.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
And so white will actually just play here, and we get into something like this. And actually, white can take away that one stone in the corner and make some eye space in the corner. So it's not exactly bad for white. It's going to be playable. We're going to get into some kind of variation like this, where white has a living shape in the corner. So that was my plan.
Good plan.
When black plays here, this looks just very bad shape. One sort of tempted to play something like this. This would be a bit dangerous because black would play here. White doesn't have a ladder to take those 3 stones. And white's eye space in the corner is not so good this time. In fact, like if white plays something like this, locally this is a dead shape. Black can kill it.
Uh-oh.
And also if white, let's get back into that variation. If white tries to be fancy and cut off the 1 black stone with something like this, black can also be a bit fancy and squeeze. Oh, sorry about that. Not that one. Squeeze from underneath. And, well, all of this might be happening after something in the center, but it's a very dangerous position for white. So I actually spent some time thinking about various variations. It's pretty obvious that I don't want to do that one. I did think about it, but, you know, it didn't seem to be working, so I played the more simple move here. And even in this case, I think black's move here was slightly bad shape. I think that Leela's move at this point is.
Yeah.
The point is that if white pushes through, this is sort of very dangerous for white in the corner.
Mm.
White will not be able to live with the entire group. White might be throwing away a few stones. Like if white did something like, it's not even alive without a ko. So it's a bit of trouble for white. White might be able to get a ko with something like this.
It's really painful.
Mm-hmm. So it would be dangerous. Let's see, where was I? Right here.
Wait, look at that. That move just looks bizarre.
Which one?
The
black move?
the Kasumi. It's just, especially when you show the correct move. The correct move.
Yeah. Well, even this was playable for white, so it's not a huge difference, but it's slightly better to play the jump. You'll find this kind of move in Tesuji books. It's a kind of standard Tesuji. But sometimes these moves can be very powerful. It is closing me in on the side there. I can actually draw on the board. Let's see. This is the first time I'm using this. So it's kind of making my line.
Oh, Michael's getting wild and crazy, people. Look at this.
Yeah, so black's stopping me on that line. Yeah, I'm learning, but it doesn't go away, does it? I have to erase it.
It went away. No, it went away.
Right, good. So I pushed through here. So this is the way to go. It works for white.
That's a decent size. That's a decent size corner now.
Yes. And black cut, which was a mistake. I recognize this as a mistake as we were playing. Black should just go down here, and white will capture the corner. Leela was suggesting that this kind of fight will happen, and I'm going to use this diagram to explain what's happening with black on the right side. Black is not really alive, and this is an example of Leela not really worrying about that. It's funny.
Everybody out there can see the placement, right?
Yeah, you have a placement. In this position, if it's black's move to play, which could happen, white does really need to protect the outside group because black has a lot of liberties in this fight. If black can force here, then black will have enough room to live.
Right.
If black cannot force there, for instance, if white gets to play first here, if it's this position, it's just dead. Yeah. So if black plays here, there's 2 ways for white to kill it. White can play here first and then here. And in this case, there's no issue with this move, which is sometimes the answer to a Tsumigo problem. It's just not working in this case. Otherwise, white can just play. White can just play the diagonal move. So white can just play here. And in this case, it's not quite a seki because this makes black has to connect 1 on the outside, and I get to play this move. Or I could be fancy and play 1 here first. But this is a 5 stones inside. You have to remember 5 stones nakade. That's 8 moves alone. So this black group is 4 outside liberties. It has something like 12 liberties. So in this position, I would be worried about moves like this, which would be putting a lot of pressure on white on the outside. Or moves like playing here first and then here. This just looks very scary for white. So I probably wouldn't be going after the black group immediately, but I would be continuing the fight in the center of the board. But that would be okay for me. So in the game, black cuts here, and I play an Atari and crawl. So this is a really interesting position in which those two black stones are not dead. But do you think black wants to save them?
They're not dead because they really look dead to me. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. In that case, you're not going to try to save them for me, so I'll do it myself. Now, black can play here and squeeze. And when black comes immediately, there are some exceptions where I'm going to throw away these two stones, but in this case, I'm going to answer all of black's moves. So I save the two stones, and black can connect. But you have to notice black has played a lot of dominant points here. And white's next move is a vital point. Do you want to guess where white's next move is?
R16 looks too clumsy. R17 looks slow. I'm thinking some shapely move like, I don't know, S18 or something clever. Too clever?
All three moves were good ideas in that direction, but you should be looking this way.
Oh, outside. Oh, much better. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that black can get some extra points in the corner, because those stones are pretty irrelevant at this point. This would be a big win for white. So 8 is a very important point there. So the whole idea is that if black saves those two stones, white can get the vital point at 8. It's a vital point that really makes those 5 stones on the outside, the black stones, they're floating in thin air, you might say.
Yeah. They're just a big fat target now.
Even if black answers 8 somehow, like if black plays something like this, then I would play here. Now I have no issues at all in the corner. And this is actually a good point to return to the idea of black's right side, because if white plays here and here now, again, it's going to be a dead shape. And I'll go into more detail in the real game. It gets more exciting than the real game.
Pretty.
So black played here now. So this is a test.
I have been a little,
It's very similar to the test that he didn't play, right?
Right. It's a squeeze, yeah?
It's a squeeze. So like if white plays here, black will cover once, and now he comes here. So it's this order of moves. So what do I do? I probably connect in. Let's have me connect.
Connect.
Now he's going to connect. He's going to sacrifice those 3 stones. And he gets this squeeze. That's a really nice squeeze. And what's more, while white's 7, this stone here is putting some pressure on the black group, it's just the perfect timing for black to add a stone there. Taking away part of white's space, and making a perfectly living shape. So in this variation, this is actually good for black, because black's got this splendid thickness, splendid wall, you might say, in the center of the board. This is going to be good for black. Something like, if white plays away, black can continue attacking. So this is, otherwise, if black got to that point in the upper left corner, that would be a big point too. So I didn't let that happen. I pushed out. So up to this point, I'm using a good amount of time, but I'm playing fairly good moves. Maybe like in the beginning, you saw me talking about different moves that Lila was suggesting. But I would say that the moves I chose were pretty good also. And also, this was an important point where I could not afford to allow black's plan to happen. So it was really good that I pushed through here. And black starts a fight here. And again, white's move here, it's sort of hard to find maybe. Just jumping. Actually, Lila wanted me to extend. It's a fine difference. Extending is a better connection. I think jumping is okay usually. The idea is that I'm fighting in the center. I have potential to attack black on the upper side. And I'm still looking at some stuff that's happening on the right side. So we're going to revisit the right side black group now. So if white peeps here, in this case, white has to back off and add a stone to the center, right? So black would be able to force with this stone, and white has to connect on the third line. So basically this point at 5 is going to be a forcing move for white. In this case, black has a number of ways to live. Black could just live with something like this. So again, this is a kind of an important point in the game. The question is, how am I going to strengthen my group in the lower right area? My group in the lower right is my weak group. And I have a number of choices. Like I could play this one. This is the move that came up when I was looking at it with Leela. Some move in this vicinity. In this case, if black pushes here, I have fairly good shape when I connect up like this. So that's why white was just a little bit further than you might have expected.
Yeah.
To the left. But white is, since this is going to be a forcing move, pushing it 2 is going to be a forcing move, it's good for me to have it just a little bit further out so that I have an efficient shape when I add 1 stone to the connection. Like a very similar move would be something like this. But in this case, when black plays that move, and I'm going to be playing something like this probably, it's slightly less efficient than this shape. This shape. So in the game, I chose a different approach, and I completely understood my reasoning, and I think I have a valid reason. My idea is that this is more forceful towards the lower right area, the lower right black group. So, for instance, if black plays something like this, I can play here. I still have some potential to play some forcing moves against the corner. This is a nice forcing move that will give me some extra eye space on the lower side. All of this is profitable, taking away the final potential territory that black had, and also making eye space for myself. So it's very forceful with this good follow-up towards the lower right corner. So the move that should potentially worry me is the idea that black can build up the lower side. But in this game, I decided that it's okay for me to be pushing him on the lower side, even though he's going to be playing moves on the 5th, or later on it's going to be the 6th line. Even though black can get a big kind of moyo on the lower side, I know that the fight in the center, my instinct is the fight in the center is going to be much more important. And so at this point, I decided I'd just concentrate on the idea of winning the fight in the center of the board. After black has played all those stones there, black has played 4 stones here, putting a lot of emphasis on this fight in the center. It means that if I can make all of those stones useless, if I can attack them and make them the victim, then I should have a good game, even if I give black a big territory on the lower side. So that was my positional judgment in this position. And I just played with that. And like this is what you can't get from the computer, and it really worked for me well in this case. Even though Leela was suggesting this move. This would be much more difficult to finish, I think. This is much more easy for me to understand.
Me too.
And so black plays this way. And also there's the point that I'm going to be alive. I'll show you in a few moves that I'm alive in the corner. So the idea of covering here is sort of forcing against the corner, because if white plays away, now black can save the 2 stones. And this is sort of bothering for white in the corner. Like white has, the only way for white to live without a lot of trouble is this way. And it means that black is going to have some more forcing moves, capturing 2 stones, like this kind of thing, capturing 2 stones, and it takes away my attack on the right side, which is sort of annoying. But of course, Leela in general isn't thinking about killing the right side anyway. So it's sort of interesting that this move is probably a very human move in that way, because I'm actually threatening to kill the right side. Black plays away, but at any point I can play here now, and this is a dead shape. The right side is just dead as it stands. Are you looking doubtful, Chris?
No, I'm trying to calculate how, because I'm sure that Leela doesn't want you to play there, and I'm just trying to count it. This sort of came up the other day with that, that sort of that upper left corner, which nobody bothered to kill or save.
Right. Well, in this case, it's a bad idea for me to do it immediately because black has a lot of liberties. Black has a very long shape here. For instance, if black played this way, for instance, and this way, if we got into this shape again, it's this kind of thing. If we got into something like this, actually, it looks like white can live in this case. Let's have black play a peep. Well, it's okay. Something like this. Black has 8 liberties inside and 4 liberties outside. So this is, although black will not play this entire sequence, if black does, it's 12 liberties. So any semi, almost any semi, black's going to win. White has to be very careful of that. So that's the problem with this, is that I'm a bit worried about semi. In this case, I can actually live with this move. So it's not as if it's going to be a disaster for me. But then, of course, I have to worry about the center stones too. It's probably not advisable for me to go after the black group immediately. And it's something that the computer program seems to agree with that idea. So I'm going to continue playing in the center. And again, originally my idea was that if I can win the fight in the center, I have a good game. So I have to remember that. I'm sort of fixed on that one point, and I'm going to worry about killing the black group later, because I had the feeling that the game was going fairly well for me at this point. And so I play this way, and it turns out, well, as I had calculated, actually, it turns out that white's alive on the right side now. Mm-hmm. So I have a perfectly living shape now. I'll mark the 2 points that are usually going to be Mei, these 2 points. So if black plays one of those marked points, I'm going to play the other. So it's a living shape. And black is weak in the center. We can see that black territory forming on the lower side. But as I said, the fight in the center is much more important, because if I win that fight, and this becomes a strong group, then I get to attack black on the upper side next. Black only has this one territory on the lower side. It's not going to be enough. So that was you could say it was my experience, was telling me that. So black jumps out. But this fight is going to be an advantage for white. So I already have I have a favorable percentage, but the next point, this is where where Leela started giving me very, very good scores. After black played this, I didn't understand this move. Leela didn't understand it. I think Takao had some kind of a miscalculation here, in which he thought that this move was indirectly giving him a living shape on the right side. And it's pretty tricky, actually. We might have fun with you finding the right answers for
Yeah, it's an interesting problem, right? It's
an interesting problem there, with the question mostly basing on, is this going to be a forcing move for black or not? And it's sort of interesting. So we'll look at that later.
Yeah. I'll tell you what we'll do. The viewers can take a look at that. We'll ask them about it.
Yeah, sure.
They can consult among themselves.
Sure. So when I play here, the idea is that that was a weak point in my shape. I'm still focusing on this center fight. Like if I play elsewhere, I always have to worry about the wedge here, which is going to cut me in some way. In this case, black might just play the hane. So this is something I'm worried about. Obviously, it would be sort of awkward for me to be playing a move like this, which is sort of punishing myself in the corner. So I don't want to do that usually. I played here with the idea that if black answers, then this is obviously a bad fight for black locally. And I'm remembering that I can kill the right side at some point. So I'm going to attack in the center. Actually, I'm going to be happy to be spending most of my time in this fight that's going to be flowing into the left side. And then eventually I might take the right side. I'm not so focused on taking the right side either. And with my experience with computer programs, I sort of know that Leela is not really worrying about the right side either.
But I just want to, your feeling at this, you must have had a pretty good feeling at this point. It feels like white has gotten control of the game.
Yeah, I think I was pretty sure that I had an advantage here.
Right.
I did have to worry about the lower side, that black is going to get some territory there.
Right.
But if this fight in the center continues into that variation I was just showing, this one, it means that later on, while attacking black, I'll have opportunities to play moves like this, or maybe even running out with the one stone to destroy most of black's territory anyway. Or I could be more straightforward and just be jumping into the territory. It all depends on how the fight develops. So if black is going to run away in the center, he's not going to get that big territory on the lower side. So actually, Takao left it at this point, and he started to build the lower side. And this was an interesting point in the game because I'm still focusing on the center. Although I'm alive on the right side now, there's actually some issues with that. If I kill the black group, it could change that a little bit. So I'm still focusing on winning the fight in the center. I want both of these white groups to be secure before I actually go after the right side. That was my feeling at this point. It doesn't really matter, but that's probably the safer way to go about it when white is already ahead. So I added a stone to the center, just making it more and more difficult for black to escape. And black adds a stone here. So now I finally decide it's a good time to kill black on the right side. So I play here.
Well, because
I feel safe in the center now. I feel that
okay.
the fight in the center is finished.
Okay. Well,
So,
this is one question. You were talking about winning the fight in the center, and I think that people would think that by winning you mean killing the group, and that's not actually what you mean, I don't think.
well, I've pretty much killed it now. So that was the actual result. But like at this point, when I played this move, the idea was, as I was showing you, was more like this, where I'm going to just harass it for a while.
Right.
And I'm going to accomplish I have some things I have to accomplish. I have to make this white group connect up to the upper left corner and become a strong group. So that would be like in this variation, I'm already getting there. And I have to do something to reduce the lower side. And so these are things that I would probably be thinking of doing before I killed the right side, even though that's about 30 points. The fight in the center for a while is going to be more, once black has moved out, that's worth more than 30 points. Like at this point, that black group is probably, it's worth more than 30 points and it's approaching 50 points or 50, 60 points. So that fight will be very important for a while. And I'll just be, while I'm attacking, I should be able to finish with the tempo to kill the right side. So that would be my game plan.
Okay.
So I wasn't actually trying to kill black, but I wanted my white groups to be very secure, so that black did not have anything, any counterplay, you might say.
Now, I feel like you may have answered this, but there's a question about, and this came up the other night as well, about when you were analyzing it with Leela, and Leela has a different move than you have. And the question is, how much time do you spend looking at Leela's variations, or do you just trust your own reading? And if I recall correctly, a lot of this, because it's almost like research for you. I mean, if Leela has a different move, you're really curious to try and understand whether or not you decide. You talked about it in this game already. Sometimes, even when you do understand it, you still like your move because you know how to play your move.
Right. That's true in the opening, mostly. Of course, Leela and programs like Leela are most difficult to understand in the opening.
Yeah.
Because it's sometimes very hard to attach meaning to what they're suggesting. And humans have to have some logic, to understand it. So, when it's hard to find the right logic to attach to it, it's very difficult. So the openings are difficult. Also, but they're very worthwhile for me to study, because, basically that's the most lasting, value that I can get. Like in the middle game, it's relatively easy to see if I had just messed up, or maybe, it's a question of Leela being like AlphaGo was, and playing some ambiguous move because it's going to win anyway or something like that. And it's not, from the human viewpoint, it might not be the optimal move. It's not the best move. as we would calculate it. But it's good enough to win. And for some reason, it was getting a better percentage in the playoffs or something. So sometimes it's not something that is important. More often, it's probably just that I've messed up. And in either case, if it's middle game or end game, it's relatively easy to figure that out. So I spend the most time in the opening and just thinking about it and trying to imagine what Leela is trying to tell me, you might say.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to humanize these robots, I know, but the way I think about it, just trying to figure out what the message is, is where I think I learn a lot from.
And I think that's something that us amateurs, I find myself doing the same thing. Leela, I mean, there's two things. Like, one is the moves that you're talking about, but also when they're, you almost always have a really good sense of, what the game status is. But for amateurs, we often have a completely wrong idea of.
In any case, I think the computer analysis, I think the score that it gives the game is usually pretty good, especially if you go into a lot of searches. It's going to be better than my analysis, my feeling for the game.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty happy when my feeling for the game matches what Leela tells me. And so actually that's one of the most valuable parts of the computer analysis, because it's almost always right. And we already know what the exceptions could be. Like if it involves, it's going to happen in this game. Actually, I'm going to be talking about it. When it involves a complicated smiggle, or if it involves, sometimes it involves a ladder in the opening. Sometimes it involves a complicated semi-I. Stuff like that can throw Leela, especially if you're not getting enough searches. So it depends on the hardware too.
But I think that's something that folks really can learn a lot from. It's very easy for us, even amateurs, to look and find, when the AI shows a move, and it happens a lot, and there's a big change, right? And it's black was way ahead, and now white is way ahead, and it's really worth spending some time to try and understand, why did that change? Because that's really, really valuable.
Yeah, well, actually, the turning point in this game was black's capture here, which was really a surprising move for me. A pretty obvious mistake. It was. It's what some people would call a hallucination. People like Suko used to call his moves hallucinations or polkas, various things. But it was just a complete oversight about something in the corner. So he misread the corner position, which wasn't interesting. And you see, I'm being super careful here, adding that one stone before I go after the side. And the right side, let's see, I at one point I calculated it. It's more than 30 points.
Yeah.
It's something like 35 points. So I decided that this right side was bigger than the lower left corner. Those are the two big areas at this point. The lower left corner is actually pretty big too. But I decided the right side is bigger.
Wow.
And I killed the black group. And just as I was telling you, I'm going to talk about this now. After I killed it, I could say my winning percentages plummeted.
Yes, sir.
Or actually, there's this graph, and I think the upper side of the graph is good for black. So the graph went up actually instead of plummeting, and it goes all the way up. And then after several seconds, it seemed a long time. It went back to a win for white, but like it was going into winning percentages for black. Because it was apparently finding this life and death problem challenging.
Interesting.
And so Leela, and it didn't happen just the once. It was happening over and again. Every time it was black's turn, there would be a few seconds where Leela was looking at moves like this and moves like this. And moves like, I think maybe this one too. So these are three moves that we should look at later.
Okay.
Or we could look at them now.
Yeah,
you want to look at
the? Yeah, let me see if we've got. Let me see if anybody figured out whether we had to do it.
Let's allow black to play here. He did not play that in the actual game. How should white handle this?
Yes, that is the key move. Yes. Oof.
And for the time being, white has captured 2 stones.
Yeah. So
So white has to be careful that that's not going to be just one eye.
one eye. It's got one eye for sure. Um, I'm gonna say that. I mean, any of the sort of supposedly eye making moves like R18 or S17 are not going to work. Maybe just, well, it's either just connecting an R17 or the placement at S19 or T18. I think I've just given you all the options in the corner.
Covered everything, yeah.
except T19, which better not be the answer.
Okay.
Something like this came up the other day, and you just connected at R17 last time something like this happened.
Oh, that would be bad.
Yeah.
Let's see. How does black handle that? Like, black could just play here, and we have this dead shape here. Let's say white at this point. So it's like this, and black can connect underneath. So that's the whole idea behind black 1.
Right.
Now, if white stops that, let's say white stops that with something like this would stop black from connecting underneath. But the idea is that a ko, of course, is going to be good.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Yeah, that's
and
bad.
white has only one eye. And as I was saying, if black makes that 5-stone shape in the 5-stone nakade, the gomoku nakade shape, then he's going to have something. He's going to have 8 liberties inside, and he's going to have more outside. So it's going to be something like 11, 12 liberties for black. There's no way white's going to win the semi.
Right.
Let's see. Where else can I play?
I like T18 for some reason.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If white plays here, now we can assume this kind of shape. Let's do it this way this time.
Similar problem, right?
And black will bump against white here.
Yeah.
Now, if white cuts black off, again, we have black connecting underneath. And this is going to be trouble for white. Or if white plays something in the corner, then that's just not a live shape. So that's bad. So let's see. You were saying T18.
Haven't read it. It just has a shapely move to it.
A shapely move. This one, a shapely move. Well, in this case, let's see. How should I go about this? Black has a number of choices. Actually, the simplest thing to do, since a ko is going to be better than just outright dying, black might as well just make it a ko. So there's no way for black to cut this off. So actually, the answer to this is very simple. We looked at this. This is maybe the first move that would spring to mind. It's a natural shape. But this didn't work. Black connects underneath. This didn't work because of...
I have an idea.
Yeah? So this wasn't working either. Yeah.
Maybe just Q19.
Q19, you hit the right move there. So this is perfect. So the meaning behind this is that white has 4 liberties, these 4 stones. It means that there's no way for black to play a forcing move against these 4 stones.
Right.
White has 4 liberties. So it's not a semi situation anymore,
right.
with the fight against these 2 stones. It's 2 moves to 4 moves. In Go lingo, you don't actually call that a semi if it's a 2 move difference.
Right.
So now black can connect underneath here. As I'm showing you, there's more than one way for white to kill that shape. But when black connects underneath, white can always make the eye here.
It's the other. So it's very cool. That's very cool.
Okay, while we're at it, we'll just go into one more variation. In the actual game, later in the game, black played the hane here. Now, it would be very easy for white to live with something like this, but that would be losing a lot of points. Assuming white does not play the ko, white plays here. And since we have this shape here on the right side, it means that after black connects here, white has to add 1 more stone. So that would be conceding a lot of points. It would reduce my win from something like several points on the board to maybe pretty close before komi. So the move that I want to play when black does that is I want to preserve some points just a little bit. So now there's the question, what happens if black plays here? Now this is the tough one.
Oh, that is very tough. Ouch.
We're going to assume that a ko favors black.
I don't know, S19?
S19. Okay, we have this exchange. Bump against white.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's clever. There. Yep, that's not going to work.
Are you sure?
I really just want to connect.
That would be bad.
Yeah. It's just too easy. It's just too easy, yeah. It doesn't look like T16 works.
T16 just loses.
Yeah, it just loses right away. So that's got to be. Oh, wait a minute. No, T17 doesn't work either. I'm running out of spots.
It's a blind spot.
It is a blind spot.
Think of making two eyes.
Oh. There. Q15.
Very good. And black connects and white lives. Now, while there seem to be a lot of holes here, there's nowhere that black can come in. So this is just dead. So I think that maybe this one, or actually I think that the oversight that Takao had was not this one, because as I was telling you, white could avoid it. It was with this move and white coming straight down. Somehow he missed that move for white, because this is an only move basically. It's the only good move that white has.
It's so, I mean, when you run out, and this is the thing of high level Sume Go problems, is that you have to run them all out. This is not a simple problem. I mean, it's real obvious once you see it, but it's.
And of course, there's this move also, which again is refuted by white going straight down.
Right.
So there's a lot of variations to calculate, and I'm sort of accustomed to Leela giving me a correct score almost instantly, and like
right.
the score can vary as Leela calculates. It can change maybe a few percentage points, but this was crazy. It was like going into winning percentages for black, and then it would go back to something like 80-90% for white. And it seemed like a lot of time it took to catch up. It was because I'm accustomed to Leela being so quick. It was probably just a few seconds, but it seemed like ages before the graph would move back. Like it spikes, and then if you let it think about that move, then it gradually sort of goes back down.
Right.
And that was happening every time it was black's move. So it
was recalculating it.
It was recalculating that. It doesn't remember the Tsumego apparently. So, I would have done better if I had just maybe lived in the lower left corner.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because my instinct is, I mean, first of all, had you actually read all of that out in the upper right-hand corner?
That's very elementary reading.
Okay.
For a professional, like corner situations, although they're complicated, they're generally pretty similar to something we've experienced before, and so it's sort of hardwired.
But I guess what I'm wondering is, so you don't have a problem up there. You can kill the right hand side, black group at any time.
The right hand side is a standard life and death problem that
right.
I think even amateur Don players should sort of know that one.
Right.
The upper right corner, it was a bit tricky, and I did think about it. Having time, I did think about it just to be extra sure. I didn't want some kind of an accident to happen there.
But I guess my question is, it seems, are you not worried about giving up the left-hand corner because of two things? One is you've still got play coming in from up top.
Right,
and secondly, there actually is still some play in that left-hand corner.
Yeah, well, the point is that in this position, there's about 3 big areas. And one of them obviously is capturing the right side black group, the black group on the right side. Also, the lower left corner is big. Also, any move stemming from this stone to erase black's territory in the lower side. And so I'm going to get 2 of those 3 moves. If I take the right side and black takes the lower left corner, then I get to invade the lower side. If I take the right side and black takes the lower side, I get to play in the lower left corner. So I'm getting 2 out of the 3, and the choice is what order do I want to take them? And my idea is that, for instance, if I do something like this, which will live in the lower left corner, this reduces the value of anything that happens on the lower side, because I've already helped black make this wall here, which reduces the effectiveness of whatever I do on the lower side. So in the game, my figuring is that if black plays, for instance, something like, let's have him play something like this to kill the lower left corner, I had not completely calculated it, but I could probably do something like this to play forcing moves against the corner. So the fact that I've died in the corner is going to make it slightly easier for me to invade the lower side. Mm-hmm. So by leaving these 2 areas undecided, and as we say, making miai of them, it makes it relatively easy for me to follow up after black takes one or the other.
Right.
So in the game, we'll see me living in the lower left corner after black surrounds the lower side. So I want black to commit to one of those 2 areas before I play the other one, basically. So it's more efficient. And so that was the idea. It's probably a very slight difference that, like if you don't agree, if you feel uncomfortable doing that, it would not be a big deal if you did things if you took just one of those 3 points in a different order. It would probably not be that important. So in this case, it's a case where either one works, but I felt happier just taking the right side first. And, it's sort of annoying if black had played, like if I do that and eventually black is going to play a move here when black makes a living shape on the right side. I'm sort of doing this out of context when black's already did, but if black gets a stone here, then you can see that he's going to be pushing me around in the corner. That corner territory is going to get smaller. So there's some added value there, and it would be sort of annoying to be pushed around the corner like that. So there's that value of killing the right side too. Mm. So black plays this empty triangle, and like offhand, the shape, it looks like the shape is here. But I was sort of proud of myself finding this move, which is
very nice.
It looks sort of weird, inviting black to push through there. Sort of inviting black to push through at this point, but just playing that exchange before protecting. And we're going to see that happen in the game. So I'm not going to give you a diagram there. Mm-hmm. So black pushes here. So now I felt it was a good time to live in the corner.
Timing is really nice.
And black starts building on the side. I get to play this peep, and I feel okay on the side too. Mm-hmm. And I jump. Attach. I'm running out of time here, but it's not a big deal. I peep once, and then I cut. So, I didn't make any variations here. Maybe I should make a variation. This is actually a pretty effective cutting stone. For instance, how shall we do it? Like, for instance, black has to be careful here, because if black tries to attack this stone, white just escapes. So cutting here was a nice tessuji. I wasn't good form. And if black plays from this side, white just has a bamboo joint there and can continue with this move. So this would force this. So I would have potential just to capture one of those black roots. Or I could actually probably even start I could probably even start from here, but that might be a bit more complicated. Whatever happens here, White's going to have opportunities to take a lead, though. So, yeah. And if Black plays from this side, again, Black still has a problem. Black has to back off here. And you can see there's still the potential for me to connect this stone here in the center. So this is sort of similar to what happened in the game, only it's better for me. So Black has to play an Atari from this side. Again, Black has not completely gotten rid of that cutting point. There's still this cutting point here. So that's good for me. But he does get the lower side territory. So this exchange of these two stones and these two stones, I did give Black a little bit of extra. I passed by the opportunity to go into Black's territory in the lower side, but I'm happy with territory. So my object here is to make a happy group on the left side. That's more important to me. So I push once here, and I play the attachment. Obviously, I'm sort of eyeing this cut here, which is not forcing, but it could be forcing. That was the point of that move, that strange-looking move that I just played, this one. Because in the game, I've gained at least 1 point. Black will eventually be putting a stone in here. What's more, I have this forcing move, which might help me on the left side. So it's a couple of points I've gained here. If Black answers here, though, if Black answers by simply connecting, then this is going to be forcing. Because I can capture these 5 stones. So I would get the cut in Sente. So that was a probe which gained a point or so. So that was good. And then I play here. Now I'm going to allow Black to connect or capture 1 white stone. Black has to put a stone back there. But first Black plays here. Now this is a point where a straightforward endgame sequence would be just to play like this. And White would end up putting a stone in. White might be able to force from the side once first or something like that. But this would be a straightforward endgame sequence. Without thinking of the possibility of offending, I would say that Black is sort of trying to trick me here.
Yeah.
So I play here, and actually, I had a kind of a flashback at this point because when I was a young player, probably I was a professional, but I was at the most in my early 20s.
Okay.
And I remember there was a game. I don't remember who my opponent was, but there was this tournament game I played in Time Trouble again. And in that game, I played the Tetsuji move here.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
And Black gets to push through here once. This is going to be another of those 10,000-year Ko things. So, for instance, Black could play here. There's no way for White to live in the corner. Like if White plays here, we could have Black play here. And it's going to be that Ko in the corner. So this is it's pretty troublesome. In fact, in this case, it's a more direct Ko. This is already bad for White. And so if Black has a lot of Ko threats, which he does on the right side of the board, that's the good thing about having a dead group. It could be troublesome for White. So that's what happened to me probably about 35 years ago. And in that game also, my opponent had an advantage in Ko threats, and it got very troublesome. I lost that game.
Yeah, but I remember that. That was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
I
have a memory of one of my friends, I think it was Komatsu Hideki at the time, told me, everyone knows that you're supposed to connect on the first line first, the third line first. And, it's true. So I remembered that, and it sort of saved me in this game. I probably wouldn't have made the mistake anyway. But it's really important for White to connect on the third line here. And intuitively, it's sort of hard to see why. So I'm going to try to explain that.
Please. That's...
Obviously, well, if Black plays something like this, we're going to be heading into a seki. So this is going to be like a seki. No problem for White. So Black has to take away the I. And now White plays the Tetsuji.
Oh, timing, sequencing.
So this exchange, instead of allowing Black to push through here and make my group smaller, this exchange actually makes it very difficult for Black to create a dead shape, a nakade shape inside White. So like, for instance, if black continues with this sequence that worked so well the last time, white can just give black a bench shape here, for instance. White 4, by the way, is a key point that takes away potential for ko, because now black has no way to create a ko in the corner. At the best, black can make a seki shape. This is a shape where white would not be able to fill any liberties, but black cannot fill any liberties either. So it's a seki at the best. It's just that extra black stone there that is giving me a living shape, because if we do it with the other variation, if we do it with this variation, it would be a disaster for white. Like if I did something like that and erase the ko, it would just be a dead shape.
Yep.
So that's the difference. That's a very important difference between having that exchange in. And so this is actually pretty close to being a white territory, and black did not gain anything in this little adventure.
Good remembering.
Yeah. Well, it just flashed back to me. That was a very upsetting experience I had 35 years ago, and
I'm sure it was.
But it helped me out in this game. And so black is trying to lean on the corner to build up an attack against white. But since black will eventually have to back off here, it's not going to work. So I'm playing very carefully now because I know I have a lead in territory. I'm playing pretty conservatively. But this curling around here on the second line is a must move. This is probably an only move. If I had allowed black to take that point, you might recall my game against Otake. It's pretty recent for the two of us.
Yeah.
In which case, just to give some random move here, we got into a shape like this in the corner.
Yeah.
It's the same corner. It's the same upper left corner. And that was really troublesome for me. That was the corner that ended up being a Mannenko, a 10,000-year ko, and it was a ko at the end of the game.
That's right. That's right.
So that ko lasted in that game. It was sort of pending for about 200 moves, and then it finally happened at the end of the game. So just because of that and other things, as far as territory is concerned also, this is a very important point. I didn't actually check it with Leela, but if I allowed black to do something like this, it would probably take away most of my winning advantage. It might be interesting to see what happens with the score.
Yeah, I was just trying to count real quick while you were talking there. I mean, you're. Oh,
I'm well ahead.
You're well ahead. You're well ahead.
I don't even need
before tell me. You don't even tell me. Yeah.
I don't even.
So
I was sort of surprised that he kept on playing, but we've been playing each other for decades now. Our first experience together actually was a splendid win for me also, because we were playing in the Otei, and that's no komi. And I think I was a 4-dan or something, and he was maybe a 2-dan. And everyone was saying that he was a brilliant player already. And everyone knew that he was going to go on to take titles, and it's actually happened. So everyone was right, I suppose. But I actually won that game with white with no komi. So I was very proud.
Very great.
And then in between, there's a lot of, I won another game later, but most of my games against him I've lost, I think. So he sort of knows my weak points. So he's waiting for me to mess up in the end game here, by getting too complacent, which is something that's happened to me in the past. But I think I fixed that to a certain degree.
I like your play here. It's very solid.
Very solid. I'm playing a bit too conservatively, but in this game it doesn't matter. So we just have the end game here. I'm just avoiding any kind of a situation, just playing very solidly. And up to this point, I'm not really losing many points. Everything I did here in the upper part of the center was pretty pointless. It was wasting time. I would have done better just to answer on the left side. This is the last big move in the game. And we did go into the idea of what happens if black plays here, right? That was the one where white makes an eye in the center this way. And just in case you forgot, it's the one where white gets this eye. So that was another thing that was probably bothering Leela, because I was still having trouble with the scores. I had to wait for Leela to agree that I was winning after all. So everything I'm doing here is pretty pointless. I'm trying to harass the black group.
I was going to say that group is going to be a little careful, right?
Yeah, but also I have to worry about, for instance, a black play here would be a double threat.
Oh, I see. Yes, I see it.
Why don't we do it? Why don't we say white plays?
Yeah.
If black can play here, that's threatening not only this cut but this cut.
Yeah.
So that would be dangerous.
Yeah.
So I'm harassing the black group, but I have to deal with that potential there, and you can see I am.
Right.
So the whole attack ended with me losing a tempo. So it's pretty pointless. And black got several points back by surrounding the left side. But I'm still ahead on the board. So I just secure this corner territory. Again, I'm being very careful here, just avoiding it would be a Yoseko, but I'm just avoiding any complications. And we go on for a while. I was sort of surprised that he was playing out the end game. But I knew that in the past I've thrown away games like this sometimes, because I do get careless. And so I took this as a chance to practice being precise in the end game. And so I'm playing what I think to be the strongest move. I'm fighting this ko with that idea. There's no reason that I have to fight the ko. I could just play an end game move, but the ko is slightly bigger than everything else at this point. So I'm trying to play the correct moves from the human viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go on for a while, and eventually the white's going to win this ko. But just barely. So like this final ko threat that I'm going to play, this one in the corner, it loses a fraction of a point. White would like to be able to win the ko without playing this exchange, but I probably need that ko threat to win the ko. So we would go on. I don't think I made an end game for this, but white's winning by probably 5 or 6 points before
ko. Yeah. So it's a very strong win. Wow.
And so after I killed that black group, I kept control. I didn't lose control throughout the game, and I handled the various challenges correctly. So I'm pretty pleased with this game. And the problems I had in the opening, like where some of my moves were not the suggested moves, if you look at the percentages, it's a small difference. So I'm not really bothered by that. I think it will happen in just about every game I play. There's no way I can play exactly the same moves as the computer without knowing in advance. Like if it was something I had memorized, maybe. But that's not Go. It doesn't happen with Go. That's what makes Go such an exciting game. Even if you prepare, there's always going to be something different that your opponent does. So you're going to get a unique game almost every time.
Yeah. No, and I think that's, it's something that we're all sort of figuring out, with having, the AI. So look at stuff. How do we use that? And it's fascinating to see how the professionals such as yourself are using it as we amateurs are trying to figure out, how to become stronger players, how to understand the game. And I think, there's a lot of sort of common misconceptions, some of which you were just talking about.
I think there's a number of ways to approach it. Like I think some of the younger professionals, who, are more capable at memorization, they can do it more quickly than I can. So they have a lot of variations just memorized. And because they're professional strength players, they have no problem when it goes off track because they can improvise at a professional strength. So they have some central variations that they've memorized. And then it's no problem when the opponent plays something different because they just they're playing with their human experience too. And so it's a very good combination in some ways. But I don't like, there's some players I think that are said to have memorized variations up to something like 80 moves or something like that.
My God.
And it's not going to happen, but it's just some accumulated knowledge, I suppose, which helps them when they're in some kind of related variation.
Well, and interestingly too, part of, and then you had lots of examples of it here, when you have all of these life and death problems, there are certain, rules and patterns and shapes,
it's
that,
experience, pattern recognition.
But it's also, sometimes, even with pattern recognition, you still have to read it out, even if you see and I think that's one of the things, if you memorize at one point, I think this is probably because something a professional told me, I was memorizing, professional games, and it was amazing to me, you can, even I can memorize 100 moves of a professional game, which seemed, when I was first told that, I thought that's impossible. It's impossible to memorize 100 moves. And and it was actually really useful memorizing a professional game because at a certain point, you would kind of stop and be not sure. And it was usually points where a professional would play away where an amateur would keep playing. So that was very instructive, but also, being able to read that many moves, it just improves your reading ability in unrelated, because it's all reading, right?
There's a lot of reading. Also, you get a feel for the right moves, I think,
Yeah.
or at least reasonably good moves.
Yeah. Yeah. A great game, man. I tell you what, that was.
So that was my best game this year in 2019, I think.
Well, and I see what you mean, Michael, because it's not so much, that there was any particularly brilliant moves. It was just that your timing was really spot on, and looking at, because, once that group can be killed, I mean, I, and I'm sure every other amateur out there would be just itching to kill that group. It's such a big group. And the way that you held back, and then, the analysis of that.
Leela agreed with me, but, the computer programs have a tendency not to like to kill groups.
Oh, I know.
They don't even bother to live either. So I'm not really sure how far to take my belief in that, because it could be just objectively, maybe it was better to kill the group. I'm not sure. But I was aware at the time that I was sort of imitating the computer program in my holding back there.
Really? So you think that maybe before you would have been more anxious to kill it sooner, possibly?
My blood pressure would be going up, and I would have trouble sitting still, I think.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. Thanks everybody for watching. Big shout out to Stephen Hu, our producer. And you'll be seeing him next week. He'll be there in Singapore with Michael, and who knows who else Stephen will wrangle into being on here. So again, what you're going to want to do is follow our channel here on Twitch, so that whenever we do broadcast next week from Singapore, you are aware of it. I think it's likely to be 10-ish on the East Coast and 7-ish on the West Coast, from what Stephen tells me. So again, follow us. You'll be able to know that. Subscribe to the e-journal at usgo.org. And again, check on Fridays on our YouTube channel. We've got a couple more AG games coming your way, and maybe one more Redmond's review. We've got like maybe 3 or 4 games in the pipeline, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
During this game, I think I mentioned my game against Mr. Otake.
Oh, yeah.
You probably have not. That's probably on the way.
It's definitely on the way. Stephen's going to be working on that tonight, processing that. So, and then we will be back with some more live streams in the new year. So, looking forward to that. And then, last thing I should just say, one of the things over the holiday break is, fingers crossed, but, we're going to try and get volume 1 of the AlphaGo. I think we have 3 or 4 volumes that we're working on, something like that. I think it's 4. I think it's a 4-volume book now. On the AlphaGo game. So we're going to try and get volume 1 put together and get that out there. It's an ebook, so we don't have to go to press, as it were. Although, the Google folks want to buy copies, so maybe we will have to print some up after all. Anyway, so something to look forward to in the new year. Again, thanks to Michael, thanks to Stephen, thanks to all of you for watching, and as always, thanks to the American Go Association and all of our members, and you should join the AHGA as well. All right, thanks, folks. See you next time.
Thank you.